Well, good morning. Granny Gear here for Old Guy and a Bike. Well, it's finally happened. The 13-speed Genie has been let out of the box. SRAM announced their Explore 13-speed gravel group. My thoughts on that coming up on this, well, I guess it's a Tech Friday. Oh my goodness, the interweb has been abuzz about SRAM adding one more gear to Explore. And you know, if 13 speed has been introduced in the gravel, how far away is that from mountain bike and maybe even road? Well, I know that Campy's had 13 speed for a while now, but really it's almost like, yeah, but it's kind of irrelevant because, you know, who uses that? But when the big guys start doing it, either SRAM or Shimano, well, you need to pay attention because, you know, that's the type of stuff you're going to be seeing further down the road as manufacturers are speccing and building new bikes. There's been some changes that have come along with this 13-speed group. I think some of it is really good and some of it I'm less excited about. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, to begin with, I'm not going to get a chance to ride this. SRAM, I don't even know. They don't even answer my emails, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to get a chance to try this. This is just me looking from the outside. And I'm not going to go into too many details because everybody has covered this to death by now in glowing terms, but I'm a little less glowing about some of it. What did they do? Well, they took and they added a cog into the, to the SRAM Explore cassette. A cassette like this. This is a 1044 Explore cassette. And this is just kind of a spare wheel I have sitting around for Mrs. Granny Gear's road bike, which when I bought it, her BMC e-bike, I purposefully bought one by Explore. And I won't go into that now, but it just fit her needs very, very well. And it's been great. She's running a 44 tooth front chainring with a 1044 cassette. And that has been perfectly adequate. Now, obviously, red is the top of the line, super expensive. I mean, the new cassette is like $600 retail. Wow! But you know, Dura Ace and Super Record, the high-end stuff, that's always like that. And you know this is going to trickle down to Force and Rival, and probably eventually we'll have 13-speed access, so that might take a while. So the stuff is going to get cheaper. But I doubt the spec is going to change on the cassette, although if it did, that could be pretty cool, but it's probably not. So let's see what we got and see what I think about it and why I probably am not all excited about ever using the 13-speed SRAM Explorer. Now, what I was using for quite a while on my Linsky Tie gravel bike was 2x. I was a 2x guy. I was running a 4630 FSA crank. I was running an 1136 11-speed SRAM cassette using Rival 22 mechanical shifting. Explorer for me was really not adequate. It really didn't give me a low enough gear of 40-44. That certainly, I was losing gearing. I wasn't gaining gearing over my 2x, so it didn't have that much appeal to me, and I didn't really want it for the road because I still think 2x for the road, at least for me, is just the absolute win. So when I heard Explorer was coming out in a 1046, I thought, oh, well, that's getting closer, isn't it? A 40-46. That's getting there, and that would equal my old 30x36 for the most part with my 2x. But then I looked at what they did in the cassette, and I thought, oh, that really isn't so good. So where the old cassette went 10, 11, 13, now the new one goes 10, 11, 12. What about the top? What did they do with the 46? Well, all they did was give us a 2 cogs more on the top cog, so it went, or 2 teeth more, so it's 44 to a 46. But what they didn't do is they didn't change the next cog down in the cassette. That is a 38 tooth. So where it used to go from a 38 to a 44, well, now it goes from a 38 to a 46. So we have an even bigger gap than we did before. And if you check out my video on trying to get rid of the gap in the mullet, well, you realize that that may not be the best situation. Why did they do that? This is what I'm thinking. I don't know. No one's consulting me and I don't have any inside information, but here's what it looks like to me. That they see this Explorer, at least in the red form, which makes sense, but you know that cassette, I think that's probably going to be the same as it trickles down. We shall see. If it does, It seems like they're seeing this as a high performance oriented, higher speed oriented, road oriented, racer oriented type of cassette group. If you're a fast guy or gal, you're going to run in the bottom and middle of your cassette with a 1x a lot, right? Because you're just be able to put out a lot of power. And so you care more about going fast than you do about being able to climb a hill in a very low gear. But it isn't bad, is it, to have like a bailout gear? Because sometimes the race course will throw you something really difficult and you need to maintain, need to spin a little bit, or else you're going to burn yourself out. And so having that big jump to one top gear is not bad for you, because honestly, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the very top couple gears of your cassette anyway. And so for you, something like that makes sense. You got a nice tight jump in the bottom to where your cadence is good. You're in the peloton or whatever, in the gravel, wherever you are, and you're able to match your cadence to the pace of the pack. And then here comes that grinding climb. You pop up to the top for maybe 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most, and then you're out of it down the road. But for guys like me, I spend quite a bit of time in the top of the cassette, and I don't know if I really care that much about having a 12. I think the 10 to the 11, that's nice. Do I care about being an 11 to 12 or 11 to 13? I don't think I do that much, but I do care about that top gap, which brings me to a couple of things. If you haven't seen it, you want to talk about more about how I feel about gaps in cassettes and how that affects you on a gravel bike with a mullet. I did a video, and I'll link that maybe at the end of this video, on like trying to eliminate that gap in the cassette. What seems to get forgotten a lot of times when riders are looking at their gearing is, what is the next cog down in your stack? Okay, take for instance, when I was running my 4630 chainring with the 1136 cassette, 11 speed on my old gravel bike before I went to 1x. That second cog down from the 36 was a 32. Now, it's only a 4-tooth gap, 4-tooth jump. That's really quite tight in the top of a cassette. But what's even better than that is it's a 32. Now, what's my small chainring? It's a 30. And I'll tell you, a 30-32 was a darn useful gear. It'd be like having a 40-42 and then going from a 40-42 to a 40, say, 50, right? That's pretty nice. What does the new red cassette give you? Well, it gives you the 46. So say you have a 42-tooth chainring in front, or maybe a 44 if you're really a high-speed mamma jamma. Well, okay, 44, 46, 42, 46 for a fit rider, probably all the low gear they'll ever need. But a 38, well, 38, that's a 40-38 or 42-38 is not a very low gear. So for them, that might be okay. But what about for me? So let's say I'm running a 40-tooth chainring, and a 40-46 that's a pretty low gear. I could probably make that work if I really had to, right? But a 40-38, the next cog down, that's less than 1-to-1. So I'm going to run out of gear fast on some steep dirt climb, and I'll just be in that 46 for just like a lot, even when I didn't really want to. So for me, I look at that cassette and I go, no thanks. Now, another thing that we saw introduced with SRAM Red XPLR is what they call full mount. Now, if you've seen UDH, if you've seen SRAM transmission, you saw that progression, right? When I first saw a UDH rear derailleur for mountain bikes, it was merely a mountain bike thing with the idea of having one derailleur hanger to rule them all. So it's a standard. Any bike shop would carry it. It would fit any bike, and the manufacturers just had to make their frame fit UDH, universal derailleur hanger. And I thought, that's pretty cool, but it's kind of a mountain bike thing, and no road bikes used it, no gravel bikes used it. I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. Good idea, because a mountain bike is typically where you're going to break a derailleur hanger more so than anywhere else. So I thought, that's cool. And then I saw SRAM transmission, and I thought, oh, this had to be planned all the way along, because SRAM transmission uses that UDH mounting, and your through axle goes all the way through your derailleur, and it sits in, it's super solid, it's really strong. Man, it'd be pretty hard to break that, and your axle's going through it, so you're not likely to break your frame. If you crash and break your frame because of that, you probably got bigger problems than the fact you just cracked your frame. But packaged in with that was full underload shifting that they gave for the mountain bikes, which I had to think was also thinking about e-bikes to a certain extent. A SRAM transmission, you don't really have to back off the gas. You can just hit the button and keep pedaling up this steep hill. It will shift, but it shifts very slowly because the cassette, it's got wide, narrow teeth on it, just like your chainring. And part of that package of being able to shift under load means you have some very slow shifting because it can only shift in certain parts of the cassette. It has to wait a second. Well, you know, for a mountain bike, do I want that on a gravel bike? Do I even need heavy load shifting? Well, not really. And I don't want it to be slower. And on a road bike, I really don't need shifting under heavy load. And I don't want it to be slower at all. Faster would actually be better. So here comes SRAM Red XPLR with full mount. And full mount, when you look at it, says, oh, that's a transmission type rear derailleur with the direct mount, you know, UDH and everything mounted on the other side of the dropout and all that kind of stuff, except it kind of isn't because it's a normal cassette. In other words, the teeth are not narrow wide. They're just like a regular road or whatever mountain bike Eagle cassette that we have had in the past. Now it uses a flat top chain. It's also backwards compatible, which is quite nice. So it uses the same chain as the old, as the flat top as the old Explorer, the Road, and the cranks and chain rings and stuff like that. They're all backwards compatible. That's actually kind of nice and frankly a little refreshing. So anyway, so what we get is full mount with a standard cassette type tooth profile, and that allows us to do faster and faster shifts up the cassette, which means, now that we have faster shifting and the technology of eliminating that wiggly, waggly, weak, poor shifting derailleur hanger that can bend when you drop your bike at the coffee shop and ruin your ride until you get it straightened out. It means we can get rid of that for gravel and for road, because now we don't have to worry about slow shifting. Is that coming down the road? You can absolutely bet on it. This is the shot over the bow of the ship on the death of the derailleur hanger, because I think at some point it will just go away. If I was going to go buy a frame or a bike right now, honestly, I would really think twice if I was going to keep it a long time, buying something that wasn't UDH compliant, and that means most of the bikes out there right now that you could buy are not. Now, like my Turner Cyclosis, guess what? It's UDH compliant. It's got a UDH rear hanger. I could run transmission. I could run the new Red XPLR on that. The full mount, no problem. The small builder like Turner is able to react to trends they see in the market and technology much faster than like a Trek or a Specialized. Those guys are designing their bikes 3 years back to get them out and get them ready. And so sometimes for those guys, they're a lot slower to turn that big ship around and point it in the other direction, where a small guy like Turner and others, they can react to that very quickly. Will we see more UDH compatibility on road bikes and gravel bikes 2025 on? I just about guarantee it. Well, what's the 13-speed future look like? Well, I don't really know. Will this cross over into mountain bikes? I guess it could. I'm not sure how necessary that is. I don't think mountain bikers are asking for a tighter spaced cassette down do they care about not having an 11-tooth cog on there? I kind of doubt that, honestly. What about for the road? Do I need 13 speed for the road? 2x13, frankly, doesn't interest me unless it gave me a wider range cassette. If you just stack a closer group in my 1036 cassette that I'm running on my Time 80HX, I really don't care. I don't find any of the gaps in that to be a problem at all. If you could give me a little deeper cassette, one more gear on top, well, that could be interesting, because that would open up some crank options, and maybe that would be not a bad way to go. All right, that's it for now. You guys have a great weekend or weekend, and as always, go ride your bikes with whatever gearing you happen to have on it. Cheers.